How big can I get my heart to be?
Thought Media Network proudly presents
How much love can I get flowing out of me?
The Real Talk Sisters. Deep, unfiltered, soulful conversations with Reverend Dr. Pjae Stanley, Reverend Kim Andrews, and Reverend Melinda Wood Allen.
How big can I get my heart to be?
Join us for Real Talk on Real Issues. Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Central, 1 o'clock Mountain. And now, let's join the Real Talk Sisters.
How big can I get my heart to be?
Hey.
Hey.
Hi, everybody.
How y'all doing?
Yeah. How's it going?
Yeah. How's everybody? Everybody out there?
Yeah.
So here we are, Real Talk Sisters again. I'm Reverend Melinda Wood Allen.
I'm Kim
Dr.
Andrews.
Pjae Stanley.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Pjae Stanley. Yeah.
So we're going to start with a check-in, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
How's it going? How are you, Pjae?
Yeah. Feel a little bit crazy today, and I just realized I thought I was having a heat flash, but I realized I actually turned my heater on. Forgot to turn it off, so that's good. Yeah, I started my class, and I think I shared with you guys last week that I was going to start my Mastering Your Life class for women at the local community college, and so I started that. It went good. It's I have a few women in there, and it's interesting that it went well because they didn't actually have the right title for the class. They actually said it was a meditation class, and so several people showed up to meditate. And I go, well, we'll do some meditation in here, but that's not what this is like. And they actually like what it's about, so that's good. It's interesting how many people don't really know how to talk to one another, to share stories, to actually go deep, and that's what this is about. It's about going deep, and that's an interesting process. So it's enjoyable, and so the week went really well. Thank you. Yeah.
Not necessarily.
How about you?
Not how to do it, but having a safe place to do it, I think, is a lot.
That too. Yeah,
so
that too.
For you, for providing that place, a medium for them to
That's
share.
exactly what it is. Yeah. And just making sure everybody is safe in the room when people make comments to one another, just making sure they make safe comments to each other. So yeah, it was good. It was very good. I'm enjoying it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So go ahead and turn this fan on.
Well, I'm having a good week so far. It's only Monday, but so far it's a great week. Tuesday. I don't even know what day it is. Apparently, it must be a really great week. Time is flying. So the last 2 days, and I'll tell you why I don't know what day it is. I have been all day long from 8:30 in the morning until maybe 5:30 yesterday, and then tonight it's going to be like till 8 o'clock. Doing a virtual writing retreat with pro songwriters from Empower Music and Arts. So like a lot of people that if you listen to much New Thought music, you know their music. We get together, and basically it's like names are drawn out of a hat, and we're signed to write with each other in 2-hour sessions.
Nice.
So it's like speed dating. you get to break out, and it's virtual. We've done this live many times, but during COVID, we started doing these virtual retreats, and we're like, oh, we don't have to do them just once or twice a year if we're doing it this way. But we get assigned a Zoom room, and then we just go, okay, what do you got? And we just start writing from there. So this morning I was writing with Kim Char Meredith, and this afternoon I was writing with Karen Drucker and Jan Garrett, and yesterday I was writing with Faith Rivera, and it's just been like, it's just very creatively, what's the word? It's
scary,
stressful to a certain degree. I'm less scared than when I first started doing these. I have a few under my belt now, but definitely it pulls. So you don't just get to sit on the sidelines and be a bystander.
Right.
It really calls with your heart, and do some meditation first so that you're ready for what comes up, and the collaboration too is lovely, because the point of co-writing is that somebody else might say, being confronted with somebody with a different style from yours will help your writing. It'll help you write in a different way than your normal default. So that's what I've been doing, and I'm very artistically stimulated. Perhaps even overstimulated, some might say. No, I'm not on speed. I'm just on speed writing.
Is this an invitation only, or is it just members of Empower? How do you get on this?
It is by invitation. It's Empower Pro members. Most of the members are Pjae nominee, at least nominees or finalists in the song contest that they've run for years. But yeah, so that's how it goes, and it's been a fun day. Got some really good songs.
Sounds like it. You know, you guys, I don't think I know that, but that's the opening is Melinda singing her song. What's the name of it? The title of the song? How
Big Can I Get My Heart to Be?
Yeah, so that's an example of one of her songs.
Yeah, I wrote that with Gary Lynn Floyd, and I guess a couple of years ago, and we wrote it on a virtual writing retreat. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, we weren't actually in the room with one another. We were just in a Zoom room, and it's cool how you put, like with you girls, you put your heads together and you get something bigger than you can ever do alone.
Hope. That's the hope.
That's the hope. That's the hope. Or it might even be dumber than it would be if it were just you. I don't know.
Who knows?
How are you doing?
We're open to spirit. Yeah.
I am here. I got a lot going on. I'm in a class, taking a class, advanced consciousness, and loving it. It's thrilling. It's challenging. It's challenging mind, body, spirit, and heart. It's a very personal journey. Now I understand why people take it more than once, because the personal expansion has been off the charts for me and very much needed at this point, and it's just right on time. So I'm so glad that when I heard about it, I said yes, even though I already had a lot on my plate. And my second thought was, after I said yes, was I don't know how this is going to fit in, but I'm fitting it in. So it's happening. And there are some days where I go, wow, how is this happening? And okay. And I'm loving it. And then other days I'm got that inner scream going,
what were you thinking?
I said yes. I said yes. And it is a wonderful thing. I think, as we all know, personal growth, spiritual growth is often like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You say yes, and you have no idea where it's going or how it's going, how it's going to be, what it's going to require of you. And 9 weeks in now, saying, wow, if I had known it was going to require this, maybe I would have still said yes. Because I have, at times you have a knowingness that something is right.
Correct.
I started to say, when spirit moves you to do something, then spirit's going to pull you through it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a resounding yes. And now I'm like, oh.
It's like, spirit, you get me into this. You're going to get me through it.
What a jokester.
I'm so glad you think so highly of me, Spirit. And here I am. Thank you, I think.
Yeah. Spirit must think you're a badass, or it wouldn't give you that much to do.
Exactly.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So in some moments I am reveling at my badassery. Yes.
I, on the other hand, always revel at your badassery. That's what I do in my day. Kim is a badass. Yeah. So today we wanted to talk about boundaries, and one aspect of them is this ability to know when it's time, when something's over, when to let something go. And I just got inspired to read this writing from a beautiful friend and mentor of mine from many years. He just passed away this past year, and I miss him so much. The Reverend Christopher Chenoweth. And it's called The Gift of Goodbye. And I'm going to have to put a little Chris in it when I read it to you, because if you know anybody out there who knows Chris, you'll get it. So He says, there are people who can walk away from you, and hear me when I tell you this. When people can walk away from you, let them walk. You don't want to try to talk another person into staying with you, loving you, calling you, caring about you, coming to see you, staying attached to you. I mean, hang up the phone. When people can walk away from you, let them walk. Your destiny is never tied to anybody that left. Not that they're bad persons, just that their part in your story is over. You've got to know when people's part in your story is over so they don't keep trying to revive the dead. You've got to know when it's dead. Got to know when it's over. Let me tell you something. I've got the gift of goodbye. It's the 10th spiritual gift. I believe in goodbye. It's not that I'm hateful. It's that I'm faithful. And I know whatever God means for me to have, God will give it to me. And if it takes too much sweat, I don't need it. Stop begging for people, situations, jobs, circumstances, relationships to stay or stay the same. Let them go. Say goodbye.
Ooh. Love it. Love it. Love.
Hang up the phone, he said.
Hang up the phone, he says. Hang up the phone.
Right now.
Yeah.
That is quite the boundary, and knowing thyself.
Yeah, it is. It's about knowing you, and it's about knowing when people's when it's not that I love you to have a marvelous life. It doesn't have to be in as part of my life. If your time in my story is over, and that happens, I don't ever like say you're dead to me and cut anybody off. But there are times when I just will go, haven't seen so-and-so in a really, really long time. I wish them well, but I used to spend so much time with them, and apparently their time in my story is over. My time in their story is over for now,
And that's so surprising when you actually, things are going, it's not like something went wrong. It's not like something happened. And so there are some boundaries where something has happened and you're saying, no, I don't want that to happen anymore, whatever it is. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And sometimes it just come to an end. The story, or their part of the story, I love that. Their part in your story, yours and theirs, it's come to an end. And there's no animosity. You didn't even, and sometimes you don't even realize, hey, they haven't been in my story for a while. I guess there's no need for them to be here now. And me and theirs either. Because they could have called me or they could have reached out to me and said, hey, haven't seen you in a while. But neither of us are doing that. So that's one of those where it mutually comes to an end. And so the boundary for both of us.
And so what he's saying in this is because we think of boundaries as a way to keep other people not let inappropriate things happen to us, get in our circle, right?
Right.
So if you think about boundaries as not only incoming but outgoing, have you ever had, think about how when you were a teenager and you had a boyfriend and he broke up with you and you went, no, please love me. I don't know. Y'all didn't do that probably, but please love me. Please love me. I might not have used those words, but that's what I was saying when I was kept hanging around somebody who had obviously edged me out of their circle, but I didn't want to be edged out of the circle. I want to keep that's an ongoing boundary. And I think for a long time, I didn't understand boundaries either coming or going. I thought that it was okay if I just leaked my emotions all over everybody else, whether they asked for it or not, or even whether they put up, their cross and wore the garlic around their neck. I was just like, why are you wearing garlic? I love you so much. And it was because I didn't love myself enough to be able to deal with what I perceived anyway as their rejection. And so that's part of building boundaries, is learning yourself, to know yourself really well.
Yeah.
And, knowing what your limits are, knowing what belongs to you and what's your business, what doesn't belong to you and what's not your business. So Pjae, you are muted. We can't hear you, darling.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
There you go.
So thank you for that. So when we were talking about this, we have a list of topics that we want to talk about just to, for the whole year. And so we said, what do we want to talk about today? And we were talking, and they were talking about boundaries. Kim and Melinda were really excited about it. And I thought, well, what do you? And so we had a conversation. What do you mean? What are boundaries you're talking about? And so Kim reminded me of a boundary that I've been working on and expanding it more and more, and that is with my ex-partner. And so the relationship, even when you're in it, when it's ending, whatever, it goes through different phases. And so sometimes it's not over. Just because it's over doesn't mean that the relationship necessarily is completely ended. And so and I think Melinda and I talked about that with her previous husband. How so it just as you're going to, okay, you know what, here's a boundary, and here's the hard pass boundary for right now, because we're still friends and all that. And then you get going, wait, if we stay friends, this is kind of what's happening, and I'm not able to be my full. So the boundaries keep resetting themselves in certain situations. And so
that's okay. Yeah.
It's okay. I got a real cool picture. Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand boundaries. Yeah, okay. And I think we all do. It's just when we're using that word, it wasn't real clear, but we all have relationships with our children. And I think you gave me, Kim, you gave a great one. I mean, you might want to talk about boundaries with your parents. And so there's just relationships come in all kinds of forms.
So we got about a couple of minutes before we take a commercial break. So you want to talk about that for?
Yeah, my parents' marriage was not healthy, and when I was young, each of them would call me and talk about the other one. And then I would get stressed out. And finally, when I was in probably my mid-30s, I had to say to each of them, do not call me and talk about your spouse. Please go downstairs. You live together. I was 200 miles away. And I don't need, as your child, I don't need to be involved in your marriage. There are things I don't need to hear, things I don't want to hear about each other. And it makes me difficult to have a relationship with each of you as my mother, as my father. And so I had to set a boundary, and man, I was far less stressed out after that. And they weren't happy with that boundary in the beginning. They were a little upset with me. And I don't know that they ever talked to each other, but they stopped talking to me about their marriage business.
Right.
And so it was so much healthier for me.
And
because they would unload on me and then hang up, and then I'm stressed out. And so this doesn't serve me. I'm glad you feel good. But yeah, now I'm in a dark place. And at some point it was not worth it. I said, you know what? I'm done.
Yeah.
Boundary right here. I thought I was helping. I thought it was good for them. And I thought, oh, this is something I can do. I feel honored that they come to me. No, I don't. I don't feel honored anymore. This is not my business. So please go talk to your friends or whoever, a counselor, whoever you need to talk to. I'm out of this.
Yeah. And so when we come back from the break, we'll talk about how and why it's okay for boundaries to change, to put them in, to change them, to, whatever. So we'll talk about that. Yeah. So at this point, it's time for a commercial break. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. So just thank you and welcome back. So just talking about how, we set boundaries, and you said, Kim, that you thought you were helping, and you probably were helping them, but it wasn't helping you. And
Right.
so, the boundary setting is about you and self-care. We talked about this earlier. You were starting to feel worse and worse about it. So like, So now I'm gonna have to go back in and say, and that's fine. I'm gonna go back and say, yeah, I know we started it. I'm gonna step myself back out of it, and we can do all of those things. That's a part of you making a choice about what's working for you. That's what boundaries are about. That's what boundaries are about. What is working for you, not just for the other person.
And sometimes I had to remind them of the boundary because they would call and they'd start talking. I would say, I don't do this. So we can either switch subjects or I have to go.
Yeah.
And eventually they didn't do it anymore. But in the beginning, I think, it was so much of a habit.
Yes.
That they would just pick up the phone and start talking. I would say, okay, we're segueing into that stuff. I said, we're not doing anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. And the thing is, the boundary is for you, but it's also healthy for the other person.
Yeah.
It's not healthy to let somebody leak all over you when it's an inappropriate situation for that. And, I was taught early on by my parenting mentors when my child was little that it is, what did they say? If you do something for someone that they can and should be taking responsibility for themselves, you rob them of their dignity. And that, as a mother, that pierced my heart, because at the time I was still, talk to my family now, they'd say I'd still battling it, but I have come very far in my recovery from perfectionism. And a lot of times when my daughter was little, it was like, oh, she's not going to do it right. I'm just going to do it for her. And I realized how I hurt her, how I did take away her dignity. I took away her ability to learn to do things sometimes because I was going to do them. So I had to really draw a boundary with myself about what is appropriate for me to do, what is really her business and not mine.
Yeah.
And what is, and it's a huge thing to realize that your child has their own business that has nothing to do with you. Imagine that.
I know. And you bring up a really good subject, when you're talking about boundaries, because and taking someone's dignity, because I think as ministers, and certainly because we're in this new thought arena, and we are trying to get people to understand what's different about how we see God. And that it's not a pleading thing. It's not a God out there, all of those things. And so we have different things that we put into place. And when we have some of our congregations, some of even our chaplains, whatever, want to get up and to say a prayer. And we know we have the 5 steps, or, if you're in unity, and we have the same 5 steps in which spoken differently in Science of Mind. As a minister, I'm thinking, okay, how do I don't want to take away their joy, because I'm reminded of, and I don't really know exactly what the scripture is, but I'm just reminded of this scripture where this person told another person that he wasn't praying well. Like, he prayed all the time, but he told him, "Oh, you're not praying right." And then he started trying to pray like the guy told him to, and his prayers were no longer sincere. And God came and told the guy, "You don't tell people how to pray. If they're praying sincerely, that's how they do it." And so we have to be careful and mindful about what is it that where are the boundaries for us? I know that when you're up there, particularly on the podium, you're kind of being an example for what we believe. But if you're praying sincerely, so what I try to do is just kind of during some training sessions, like every 3 months or so, we'll have a training session, just remind people that this is kind of how we do it, without actually going to hey, what kind of prayer was that? That's not a new thought. Right? We have this tendency to think that it all has to be this particular way because we're trying to retrain ourselves and rethink about how we actually approach God. But the bottom line is, I don't want to take somebody's dignity or their relationship from God to God away from them. And
and in that situation, because it goes both ways. You also understand that your larger responsibility is to your congregation and to their experience in the service. So if someone is not living up to their responsibility, then that has to be a boundary. Like, no, we need to talk. We need to retrain before you do this again. Not attacking, not saying you're wrong. But saying,
how do we do that? Exactly. How do we do it in a very loving way?
In this, because you're here in service to others. So how can we best serve others? And part of boundaries is knowing what our role is. What's my role here?
Exactly. Yeah. What the full role? What is the full role? Because yes, I'm looking at other people that are being affected. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at me. I'm looking at everyone. And so So again, part of the boundary is self-care, caring for others, all of those things. It's not, no, it's just not a, it's not a one thing that we do. It's very well rounded. There's a lot of issues, or not issues around it, but there are just a lot of dynamics around it, a lot of things that we need to pay attention to. Like in life, all of life, it isn't just one thing.
So if any of you out there in the audience have experience with boundaries or a question about boundaries, put it in the chat. We'd love to chat with you, or email us. We're really checking that email one day.
One day.
All three of us went, "Are you checking that email?" No, I think you were.
Who's
no, I thought you were. We're going to check that email.
Where is the email?
We're going to know if you've emailed us. realtalksisters@gmail.com. So I just want to share that I might have been an extreme case of not having any boundaries, and how that happened was growing up in an alcoholic home where I took on the role of peacemaker, of make everybody get along, of keep the wheels greased so that there's as little chaos as possible. And I was so dedicated to not being the squeaky wheel that I had needs that were ignored, that should have been taken care of as a child. Yes. But I didn't say, you haven't taken me to the dentist in 17 years, didn't occur to me to say that.
Right.
But I didn't have a toothache. And if you got a toothache, you get taken to the dentist, but nobody just take you because you're
wrong. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I took on the role of trying to please, trying to keep the alcoholic appeased by pleasing him, trying to keep my mother, who was the untreated Al-Anon in the role. She's like somebody who is highly affected by my dad's alcoholism in ways that crippled her in some ways. And so keeping her happy, keeping him happy, keeping the siblings quiet, making the good grades, trying to do everything so that everything just, fit in this tiny little hole that I was trying to fit my life into. And that was, to a certain extent, a survival technique as a young child. But then, you grow up and, or you don't grow up, your body gets bigger, but you don't grow up.
No, I love that part. That's probably another show right there. Yeah.
Right. So that's one of the things that we ask about, that we have to look at. But when I got into therapy, one of the first things the therapist asked me was, what do you want? Every time she would ask how I was or what I wanted, I would tell her how my husband was and what he wanted, or how my parents were and what they wanted. And I didn't even know what I wanted, because whatever movie you want to go to, that's the movie I'll go and see. What do you want to eat? That's what I want to eat too. It literally was in small things and big things, had gotten to that point, which can happen. And so I didn't realize that I was emotionally leaking on other people and trying to get from them what I wasn't able to give to myself. Mm-hmm. I had to learn how to pull in and go, wait a minute, you're the one whose responsibility it is. And that's what New Thought says. It's my responsibility. I don't get to say, somebody died for my sins and I can't do any better than this. I just put it on them. I have to say, what is mine to do here? If I want to live a better life, how do I go about it? Not alone. I call on God. I call on spirit. I call on spiritual friends. I'm not alone, but it's ultimately my responsibility. So boundaries are about taking care of my responsibilities and not expecting anyone else to take care of them, and not taking over anybody else's responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's hard to do when if we are defining ourselves by everything that's outside of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I remember too in my teens and 20s that I was okay if my boyfriend was okay, just like you said.
Yeah.
And so if he wasn't, then I'm trying to fix something in me or change my behavior so that he can be okay. Because if he's okay and he still wants to be with me, then I'm okay.
Yeah.
But, if you don't have a sense of self, then you don't know about boundaries. Like you said, absolutely. We have to know who we are and what's important to us and what we stand for, what we will accept and not accept in relationships, and and live from that. And I wrote down before we came online, I really think of boundaries as rules of engagement. How do we engage with each other or not? And knowing what those rules are. And for me, a lot of that is about what do I value in life? What do I value in relationships? And so I set those boundaries based upon my values, personal values that have nothing to do with anything outside of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of the thing that we talk about, we talk about self-care, and we'll be talking about that throughout this time on the show because it's so important. And the boundary or the line that we're looking for is the difference between self-care and selfish. We seem to think that wanting to care for ourselves, setting boundaries, telling people what is or is not okay is a selfish thing to do. And the thing is that it is absolutely necessary for you to define and to figure out what is okay with you, what is and what is not okay with you, because this is your life. This is, and even though you're involved with other people, it's still your life. When I was asking you guys earlier about how do you define boundaries, you said it was a line that we draw that limits the relationship. It's a line that we draw that limits, some of the things that we could do in a relationship or that can or cannot be done in a relationship. And so in order to draw the line, you got to know what the limits are. Yeah. You have to know what the limits are. You have to own what the limits are. And, so a lot of times we simply don't want to be like with your mother and father. I want to be helpful to them. I want to be their daughter. I want to do all those things but in the end, it's still your life. It's like, I'm doing all those things for them. What are you doing for you? Yeah. How is what you're doing helping you in your life? So for me, boundaries helps me to be more who I am and be okay with that.
In my life, I found myself the confidant and best friend of several people who I would never confide in, and they weren't my best friend. You know what I mean?
I do.
They called on me, and I would spend hours on the phone with them because they wanted to spend hours on the phone. Yes. Same kind of like with your parents. I don't know why. It makes more sense to take responsibility for somebody that's that important in your life, but it might just have been somebody from my community that just. And my daughter pointed out to me, it's like, you spend so much time on the phone with her. And I'm like, I know, she's just very needy. And my daughter, as a pretty young person, maybe 9 or 10 years old, went, yeah, what's that got to do with you? It's like,
ouch.
She still does that stuff to me all the time. She's just like, calls me out on stuff, but I wasn't aware. And I was trying to meet my need to feel important in someone else's life.
Yeah.
So it wasn't fair to me, and to my family, for me to spend that much time. And it really wasn't fair to the other person either, because I was not their savior, nor was I trained to be their therapist. And as long as they had me to dump on, it made it easier for them not to look at their own stuff.
Absolutely.
Possibly made it less likely that they would seek out professional help, because I was letting them use me in a way that wasn't appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to learn the way I learned boundaries. And my first therapist and subsequent therapist would give me books. Here's a book you should read, Melinda. It's called Boundaries. And here's a book you should read. It's called Hold Those Boundaries, or What is a Boundary? And they give me a video. Watch this. It's called Boundaries. I read the books. I'm a good student. I watched the videos. I'm like, yeah, oh, you put a hula hoop around yourself, and everything outside of the hula hoop is not within your boundary. I understood it intellectually, but I didn't get it. I still didn't think it was okay for me to say no to another person. That I felt like it was unloving or unkind, until I had someone in my life who was a mentor to me, and it was clear to me that she loved me. It was an older woman. And she was someone, I was in a 12-step program. So she was someone that it was appropriate for me to call on when the chips were down and I didn't know what else to do, when my hair was on fire. And sometimes I would call about the latest crisis, and she would say, "Oh, if you'll remember, Thursdays are the days I spend with my grandson, so you can call me tomorrow. Bye."
Ooh, nice.
And here I was with all the, you don't understand. You don't know what he did. You don't know what's happened, and my first, I would go, this was my internal dialogue, was like, oh, she said no to me. She doesn't love me. She doesn't love me. Well, evidence shows that she does love me.
Yeah.
But she said no to me. But she loves me. And then it's gradually I went, oh, she said no. And you can love somebody and say no to them. Who knew? I didn't know until that moment when I knew. I truly didn't know. And that was the beginning of really understanding. It's like, when I say no, it doesn't mean I don't love you. Doesn't mean I don't have time for you. It doesn't mean anything other than I'm not available right now because I'm taking care of my own needs. Correct. And sometimes it has to be a hard boundary, like, this is no longer working for us, and I'm going to have to say goodbye to you, or listen, I'm done for now. I'm hanging up the phone. I love you. Goodbye. But and sometimes it's just like, talk to the hand. I've got, that's all I can handle right now, honey. Come to me later. Give me 5 minutes or whatever. I mean, that's a boundary. There are all kinds of boundaries, but you have to know yourself, and you have to love yourself.
We have a person in the chat that says, and I completely agree with that. She says, I just have absolutely no. It's funny for me. I have no problem creating boundaries at work or at church or wherever, but family, that was the hardest. That was the hardest. Mm-hmm. It's taken me a while to realize that no is a complete sentence. Yeah, it's complete. No. And family are the ones that
women too. That our family, we're taught as women that are we owe everything to our families, that we're supposed to nurture them, we're supposed to care for them, we're supposed to provide, we're supposed to, and we can do all of those things, but not include ourselves, not at expense to our own mental or emotional or physical health or well-being.
Exactly. I remember talking with someone, they were talking about this very thing, and just all the family stuff and all the people they're taking care of and all the things they were doing. And I said, yeah, good for you. That's great. Are you in the circle too? Are you in the circle? You're standing outside the circle of care and taking care of everybody else, but you got to put yourself in that circle and care for yourself as well. You deserve to be, and they need to be taking care of yourself. Exactly. Put yourself in the circle of care.
They took their hula hoop off, put it on somebody else, and went, that's my boundary. Woo! Totally outside of myself.
Nice. There's, I think also there's always risk with boundaries, because the other person could say, you know what, I'm done. So if you're not going to be available to me when I want you to be available, I'm walking away. And I think that's why a lot of people don't set boundaries, because what if you do say, I don't like this, or I find that unacceptable? And you really have to be ready, or I knew at some point I needed to be ready to say, yes, that's okay. Like the quote that you read, I can just hang up the phone and not wish them ill. Just say, okay, then this doesn't work. And this is just not a relationship for us. And you need to go do what you need to do with whomever can work whatever your boundaries are or lack thereof. Yeah. But for me, I need to have this boundary in place.
Exactly.
I agree.
So it's risky. It's risky.
It is risky, because the boundary is never, I hear people say, well, I set a boundary with him. I said, you can't do this anymore. That's not a boundary, because you have no control over what he does. A boundary is, when you do this, here's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be there anymore. And right. I did that with my dad at one point. And I worked so hard at my dad getting forgiveness for him, loving him, all of that stuff was great. But he would, sometimes when I was spending time with him, he would just start drilling down into certain subjects that were, making me wrong, making me stupid. I was, my dad was an Army Republican, I was a liberal artist, and he'd start arguments. And one day I just said, and I'd end up in tears, and he'd end up mad. And it was just one day I just went, you know what, Daddy, I'm not going to talk with you about that. And he kept going. And I said, Daddy, I'm not willing to stay in this conversation. He kept going. I walked into the next room to talk to my mom. He followed me into the room, did it again. I said, all right, I love you guys. I'm going home now. And they were like, why are you leaving so soon? It's like, well, I told you I wasn't going to engage in that conversation. So no, it's okay. It's okay. I love you. I love you. I'll see you later. I got in my car and I drove off.
Right.
And the next time I came, it only took like 3 times. He would start. And I knew it actually at that point in my life, I thought my dad would, if you'd asked me, I would have said he would prefer, he prefers to be right over having a relationship with me. That the most important thing in the world to him was to be right, to prove himself right. And the day that I changed, that I said, Daddy, I'm not going to go there with you. And he changed the subject. He went, oh yeah, and started talking about something else. It was one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given, because it was the gift of my dad saying, I cherish your company more than I cherish being right in this. I would rather time with you.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that because I wrote this down because you're saying, and it's true, Kim, you were saying it's risky. Setting boundaries is risky. You might lose someone. But haven't you already lost someone? Or haven't you already lost yourself in the relationship anyway? Yeah. So who do you want to lose, them or you? So yeah, it's risky, but that's and I think one of the when I talk about values and the things that matter, and that when I look at the top 5 values and things like that, courage is like in my number 2, courage, because it takes courage to stand up for yourself, to say this is not okay, and do it in a way that doesn't take you out of who you are. You did it in a loving way. You didn't scream, you didn't holler, you didn't step away. Neither one of you, when you talked about the where you set boundaries with parents, you just said no, and you did what you could do. Again, your thing about saying, Dad, you can't do that, that's not a boundary. Boundary saying, Dad, should you do this again? And I don't even hear you say that. You just said, Dad, I don't want to talk about that. Don't do that. And you just made an action. You just did an action. It's the boundary by the action you took. Yeah. And so it could be as simple as that, or it could be easy as that. But you don't have to do anything. I'm trying not to use these kinds of words, but you don't. But what we're talking about is self-care and how you live a life that you want to live. Because everybody's living their own life. So you get to live the life that you want to live. So standing up for yourself by setting a boundary and having someone walk away. I'm back to Chris Jenner. Let them. What have you lost?
It's time for us to take a short break, and we'll be back with more boundaries in just a minute. I got a boundary.
All right.
So something came up for me when you were talking about it being risky, both of you. If you're not ready to assume the risk, it's better not to set the boundary. Because if you say, I'm not going to put up with that, and then you put up with it, you haven't set a boundary. You've trained someone that regardless of what you say, you're still going to put up with whatever they're giving you.
That is correct.
So it's really important. It's just like in disciplining a child. If you say, if you do that again, you're going to have to go to bed early tonight. If you don't follow up on that, then you've taught the child nothing except that you're a pushover. So it's really the same thing. We teach people how to treat us. We teach people how to treat us. And so sometimes it might not be time to set a boundary. If you go, well, I'll die if he goes away. Well, you won't. I can tell you that right now, but you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. So don't say you can't do that anymore, or I'll leave, and then not leave because it doesn't work. And it actually undermines your credibility. So it's really important not to try to bluff.
Yeah. I had an instance, as we were talking before, friendship that actually was saved and brought to another level because of boundaries. And so I had a very good friend in the 80s, and she was in a relationship, and this gentleman broke her heart several times, stood her up at the altar. And every single time he broke her heart, she and I were on the phone. I was at her place. She's doubled over in a fetal position. She's crying. She's just terrible, really a hard time. And then she took him back after all of that. And I just wanted better for her. Mm-hmm. But that was her deal, that she needed to decide what that was. So we stopped talking for a while because every time she would bring him up, and she would say, oh, I'm calling him and we're going to see each other and things like that. And I just would lose it. And finally I said, look, I can't do this. And we stopped talking for about 3 months. And it was just a very difficult time. Finally, I just missed her. We were just fast friends, and I missed her. And I called her up. We're both crying on the phone. And I said, look, we can do this, but how about if we don't speak his name? Let's not talk about him. If you're going to see him, don't tell me. If you talk to him, please don't tell me. And maybe we can move forward that way. And it really did heal our relationship. And now 30 years later, she is still one of my best friends in the world. I love her dearly. And for these 30 some years, we have not mentioned his name again. And it not only saved the relationship, but it did take us to another level, because we had to have a very difficult conversation. And I said, I love you and I want to see you happy. And that's why that was hard for me to hear you talk about him.
Yeah.
But if you're going to have that, if that's what you want, you need to do that. But I can't be there with you.
Yeah. And that just takes.
Let me know what you want to do. And she said, well, I miss you and I love you. So let's not. Talking about him is detrimental to our relationship. We don't have to talk about him.
Yeah.
And he's never come up ever again.
And that's difficult to do. And that is a lot of clarity on both y'all's part, your part to say it and her part to accept it and understand.
She could have told me to go to hell. And look, if you don't accept me and my relationship, I'm out of here. And I get that because, our relationships are important. And yes, we want to be fully accepted.
And you want to share them. You want to share them with people that you care for. So, to be in a relationship where, where someone else, you can't talk about someone in your life, it's out of bounds. And that's a difficult thing to do, but it's also reality. The woman, it's also the reality. And so I just applaud the two of you for stepping in and saying, this is breaking my heart. I don't want to be here. I love you, but it's breaking my heart. Every time we're together, my heart gets broken. And so let's just agree to let this go. Mm-hmm. And then you were brave enough and you loved her enough to try it, just to step back in and say, how can this work? Because I do miss you. I love you. And she might have said it can't work. And that would have been that. But
that's right.
She didn't. She missed you as well, obviously. And so these are the things that these are the decisions that we have to make. Yeah. This is the brave heart. This is the brave heart things that we have to do And this is the knowing of ourselves, that this is important to me, and this is what I'm willing to do, and this is what I'm not willing to do. And I'm going to share this with you and hope that we can come to some agreement or some understanding, and be okay with if you can't. If you can't.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you said courage is important, Pjae, because it is. You have to have, setting boundaries is a courageous act.
It is.
It really is, yes.
It really is. Yeah. And, just to be able to walk away. I mean, Christian was said, he said it, and it's cute when you read it and stuff like that, but he's absolutely correct to say to somebody, that's it, let them walk away. That is heartbreaking. Necessary heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
It's just necessary heartbreak. The way it is.
Sometimes it is. Yeah. So one more thing I wanted to bring up about boundaries that I think is really, really important is that they can be life and death. There were times I was taught as a child to respect my elders no matter what. To one of the, and I don't know if I was overtly taught this, but man, was I taught, don't make a scene. Don't make a scene. And I thought about this when my daughter was little, that there were times when I was a child that I was forced to kiss a family member that was not a safe person. Mm-hmm. And I was bound and determined that my daughter was going to have autonomy over her own body. If she doesn't want to hug you, she's not going to hug you. I don't care if she's 2 or she's 6 or she's 8 or she's 18. She gets to hug who she wants to hug. I never told her, no, you have to hug your Uncle Bobby or whatever. Never, never, never.
Yeah.
And when we teach our children that they don't have autonomy over their own bodies, when we teach our children, don't make a scene, don't be loud. And I can remember, like, there was a time in my life when I could walk down the street. It's late at night. I'm the only one on the street. Then there are footsteps behind me. It's some random guy. And I wouldn't want to cross the street into the light because it might make him think that I think he's some kind of criminal, and really he might be a very nice guy. Really? But no, that's the way I was raised. It took conscious effort for me to go, no, in this situation, I take care of myself, and he gets to feel however he feels about it, because this is about my safety.
Right. Because how he feels is not your business. That's not your business. How you feel.
Not my business. How he feels is my business. I'm not doing anything overt to hurt anybody, and how he feels is not my business. And it really can be life or death.
Yeah.
It really can be.
Yeah, I do that with, like, in elevators. If I'm standing on an elevator and there's a man in the elevator and I would be by myself with him, if my intuition tells me don't do that, I might get on the elevator and walk right back out.
Yeah.
And you know what? If he feels badly about that, that's okay. Tomorrow he may not be thinking about me. And if he is, that's his problem to repair, not mine.
Yeah, that is exactly.
But I need to be safe. And if my intuition's talking to me, I need to respond to it.
Yeah.
So and no uncertain terms. Yeah.
When my daughter was, I don't know, she was like 2 or 3, and I think it was like a Christmas service, and we were sitting down front because I had to get up and down, to do the music, and she was sitting next to me, and she started squirming around, and and I was saying, you really need to be still, you need to be quiet. Other people are having an experience here. And I just had this thought. I almost laughed out loud. When I was that age, if I started squirming in my seat, my mother would pinch me. Like, it was the church pinch. Yes. Y'all get the church pinch? It was the church pinch. And I remember her telling somebody, you pinch the child, if you slap the child, people can hear it. But if you just pinch him, only you and the child know. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is like a strategy for her. And so I was thinking about my mom doing that, and we were dead quiet, no matter how hard she pinched us. We never made a sound. We would have been taught not to make a sound. And I just had this thought, if I pinched Erin, she would go, why are you pinching me? You're pinching me. I mean, there's no way would that child have just quietly taken it. And I was like, oh my God, it was hilarious to me. And yes, it made her a little less convenient to raise. And yet I was very proud that she's going to be safer in this world than I was. She's going to be safer in this world than I was, because she knows that she's in charge of her body. Nobody, not even her mama, can tell her what happens to her body.
Yeah.
So in our last 5 minutes, what are some last, maybe each of us could share a last thing.
Yeah.
5 minutes. What do we think? What are we taking away from this?
For me, because again, I came into this conversation with the two of you, and you had to clarify to me what you meant by boundaries, and it's a great topic, and I just not something that I've been working on very, very much, or consciously, but this is absolutely a self-love, self-care concern that we should have for each other. The concern is not the word I want to use, but it's absolutely a self-care and self-love thing that we need to do. It's an imperative. I like that. It's an imperative. It is an imperative that we allow ourselves to say, this is not okay. This is not okay. And I think you're right. We do have these messages, whether they're overt or covert messages, about how we're supposed to behave. But if there's a behavior that's going on, whether it's with friends or family, neighbors, strangers, it doesn't make any difference. If there's a behavior that's going on that is out of our comfort zone, that makes us feel like I don't feel safe here. This is not okay with me. Then we absolutely get to set that boundary, regardless of what, I was going to say, regardless of what somebody else is thinking. And quite frankly, we don't know what other people are thinking. So first of all, we got to get out of there. We don't know what they're thinking. They might not even see you because they got their head someplace else. Who knows? But the is right. What is it for you? What does it take for you to take care of yourself, to honor what's going on for you, and to say yes and no to people? The people don't get to automatically be in your life. We get to say that. No, you don't get to. I'm great, and you don't get to be here. I get to choose that. However that looks. So that's what I walk away with. It's absolutely self-care and self-love, and it's an imperative. Yeah,
you're a badass, Pjae. You are. Yeah. So what I would say is that this is something I'm still learning, and I have to, when I take on a different role, I have to learn what the boundaries are for that role. So as a minister who is involved in pastoral care, who really, I have a heart, I want to be there for my people, there is a boundary about how much is enough, how much is too much, how much is not enough. Mm-hmm. And so it's a moving boundary. It's a lot softer. It can change from situation to situation, person to person, but I have to be really consciously aware of it. Yeah. And keep asking the question, and sometimes I find out what my boundary should have been afterward, when I walk away and go, whoa, I am completely exhausted. I was so drained by that. It's like, but if I had maybe stopped a few minutes earlier, or if I'd said, okay, that's enough for this time, let's set another appointment, or whatever
it may be. Yeah, take care of yourself. Yeah.
So I'm still learning them. And they get refined.
I think we will be, because I think, people aren't always in touch with what's going on and what they're doing and how they're affecting you. It's up to you to be aware of that. And so, yeah, it will always be doing that, moving. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Kim?
Yeah.
I think for me, boundaries are for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the comment was, it's hard to do it with family, and it is, but maybe especially family, because I think, that's where we lay our guard down maybe the most. Yes. Perhaps.
Yeah.
And
maybe the most. And so boundaries are for everybody we are in relationship with, no matter what level of relationship that is, and that it does take courage to do that. And it enhances our relationships and our ability to be in them. So, yeah. Yeah, I love this topic.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And if for no other reason, it enhances your relationship with yourself.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Which is first and foremost.
To walk away and go, oh, I didn't let myself down.
I didn't let myself down.
I stood up for myself in a loving way. Is very important. It's very important.
And that's badass.
There is.
Badass.
That's
Yeah.
badass.
All right. So go out and be badass, people. Go out and be badass.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much for being here today.
Anytime. And even